Our next speaker is from ARC, Spada, Research Director. His focus areas include general motion control, material handling, machine safeguarding, computer numerical controllers, robotics, and servo drives. Sal has over 15 years hands-on experience in the motion control system design as a software developer, project manager, and product marketing manager. He holds a BS and MS, Electrical Engineering, University of Massachusetts, and an MBA from Babson College. Sal, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. And well, good morning, and welcome to the opening session of the ARC's Forum for Industry, Infrastructure, and Cities. So this has been my second time coming to the Indian Forum. Last year was my first. And I want to say I've already met a lot of people I've met last year, but I see certainly a lot of new faces, which is very encouraging. So one thing I just recognized, I hadn't even thought about it. I don't know if everybody knows what this particular date and why it's so significant. Does anybody know? It's Independence Day. Okay. Just thought I'd get it out. So actually, we're 10 hours ahead. So in about 10 hours, they'll be all celebrating. But as you can see from this forum, and I want to stress this, I mentioned here we're doing industry, infrastructure, and cities. So ARC has traditionally been thought of as the core competence in the industry market. But if you think about it, we've expanded our coverage to include cities, smart cities, and the technological innovations that are actually being integrated in this realm. And this is, we want to cover the overall trend going in smart cities where safety, security, and even efficiency is being employed. So as the years go forward, we'll be continuing to cover the evolution going on in smart cities as well as industry. So let's look at why we're all at this conference. What's the common ground that brings us all here today? What is it really about? It's really about the external imperatives that's driving change in organizations today. Whether it's disruptive technology, ongoing market innovations, or even multi-billion-dollar government initiatives. All of these or some combination. But all of this is putting pressure on organizations today, in industries, populations, and it's becoming clear that every industrial, infrastructure, and municipality needs to understand how to embrace and execute the digital transformation. So we've taken this seriously at ARC, and we've taken it to heart in actually developing the agenda for this forum as well as others that we're bringing out throughout the globe. But we focus on a few key things you need to know about this transformation. This includes a litany of transformative technologies and topics, such as machine learning, a subset of, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. And a lot of this is moving beyond the hype stage, such that we're starting to see more use cases in the market. Concepts such as the digital twin. Once really just a concept, but now we're starting to see it move into reality both in the process industries as well as discrete manufacturing. And then we've all heard of the term industrial IoT. It's becoming pervasive, where every device, tool, piece of equipment is all becoming intelligent in some way or form. And as smart devices and products start to proliferate, we start to see services or new types of technology introduced to create, digitalize the entire manufacturing space. So what's happening is we're starting to see shifting business models, whether it's smart manufacturing or products as a service. There's a whole litany of other technology, other business models that we're starting to see evolve. But we're starting to see more coordinated efforts today for municipalities to digitally transform their cities into smart cities. And yes, there's one thing that's pervasive across all of these topics, and that's the issue of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, it's everywhere and really continues to be at the center of every digital initiative today. And yes, I don't want to forget one important thing that's one important aspect of every digital transformation today, and that's the issue of the culture in your organization, the human element. This is increasingly important in order to create what we call a sustainable digital transformation. It's something that we've addressed extensively at ARC, both at these forums, as well as many of the publications we have in our organization. And we'll continue to write about this as we continue to evolve throughout the transformation of businesses. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention, and that's something we created last year, which is called the Digital Transformation Council. And this is if I want to call it, a virtual end-user community. And the purpose behind the Digital Transformation Council is really to allow end users trying to navigate this digital transformation, allow end users to really have a risk-free environment where they can collaborate and talk about their successes and their failures across different industries. So it's not industry-specific, but it's very broad. So Digital Transformation Council members are not anonymous, but everybody is fully aware who they're speaking to. So it's one of the things that's important about the council is the end users, not ARC, drive the agenda. And they share this amongst themselves, regardless of what industry. So what ARC functions as is more or less kind of the platform, the moderator, enabling end users to come together from different industries. And so what we manage is membership, and we try to allow an environment here where end users can start to learn from each other. So ARC is embarked on this about a year ago, and now we're starting to expand this initiative quite a bit in terms of bringing it to different regions. What we've created now is something called the Digital Transformation Workshops. And these are designed, the Digital Transformation Workshops are really designed for senior level management, where senior level management is trying to develop a plan, a strategy for a digital transformation in their organization. But oftentimes they don't have the right tools, or they don't have the mechanisms in place, and they need to develop an overall plan to bring to their organization. So our workshops, these digital transformation workshops, are really designed with the senior level management in mind and helping them leave with a portfolio of products, portfolio of tools so that they can bring it back to their organization. Now, our first workshop was launched actually this past June in Houston, Texas, in the United States. Now, we'll have a second workshop, which will be held in Louisville, Kentucky, in September of this year. And this is being held in conjunction with the Hanover Messe Trade Fair, which is called Digital Industry USA. And all of you are welcome to consider participation in this workshop. So it's a 4-hour workshop. It takes about half of your day, and you leave with a lot more thought leadership than you started with. So if there's any end users in this attendance here today that are interested in the Digital Transformation Council, please feel free to see me throughout the duration of this forum. And I've already met 2 people today, which I hadn't realized were part of the DTC. And that's Vivek Gupta from DCM Shahram, as well as Bradley Hauk. Bradley Hauk from ExxonMobil, who are already participants, and I'm sure they'd be glad to speak to you as well about the DTC. So, with all this push to transform, not just businesses, but whole industries, one of the things I'd like to spend time on today is the process of the digital transformation planning. And we at ARC are constantly asked by industrial owners about how to create and execute a digital transformation strategy or roadmap or plan. We're not sure really what you want to call it, but call it whatever you'd like. But it's clearly a challenge point in the industry today, and that's what we've identified. But I believe the need for this really relates to the expectations for transformation today. And we can look at some of the things that are being espoused in the industry today. Certainly there are pressures. Businesses are under extreme pressures. And when they undergo any type of initiative like this, there are certain expectations. And many people think they're going to be massive or game-changing, especially with much of the literature espousing tremendous benefits from going through this transformation. However, many times there's a difference between expectations and reality. And that's what this slide is about. This is really about the disconnect. There's a disconnect oftentimes between the return on investment and scale, because these can often be elusive to the end users who are trying to implement a digital transformation. Now, these statistics combine both ARC research as well as publicly available information. So what this is saying to us is that on the left we have more than 80% of the industrial companies today are embarking or have undertaken a digital transformation initiative. However, and this is where the big gap is, less than 11% are seeing any type of sustainable success. In fact, what we're finding is industrial users are suffering from something we call pilot paralysis. And others are unable to scale up or maximize any benefits. Now, I don't need any sophisticated algorithms or machine learning to really look at these numbers, because I know there's something wrong with this picture. And what ARC is trying to do, and what we're seeking to do, is to help the industry close this gap between this 80% and 11%. So why is there a disconnect? Why is there a disconnect between this desire to transform and the reality of actually doing it? Here, we're finding 3 common related missteps, and they all have to do with the flaws in the planning process. First, there are far too many possibilities without a clear direction. Secondly, many people are just simply pursuing technology blindly. And thirdly, and this gets back to the cultural issues, that is, there's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to recognize. And that's the cultural barriers that you're going to face when trying to implement these changes. And the established traditional means for strategy development today and roadmap designs are simply not built with the digital transformation in mind. And so they really fail to account for these cultural barriers and human behaviors that are prevalent in your organizations today. So, as you can see from this short list, I consider it a short list because we can expand this list by at least 100 more bullets today. But as you can see from this short list here, a digital transformation presents many possibilities, which can both be challenges and opportunities. Some are understood in the organizations, but are still very difficult to achieve. Many of these challenges or opportunities can't be foreseen on the impact, as far as the impact they'll have on the organization today. Yet, the organizations must be prepared to deal with these. So, as I said, I could have put at least 100 more bullets on this slide. However, I believe this is sufficient. When examining all these possibilities, we find what we identify as some common threads. That is, organizations are finding it exceedingly difficult to answer these simple questions. What do I actually need to do? And why am I doing this? And actually, when should I deploy it? These are the real common threads that we can identify across these many bullet points. So oftentimes, we're all looking for direction, so we need a compass. Without a good compass today to provide you direction, really many companies gravitate toward a digital transformation as a pursuit of technology. Well, that's oftentimes very natural, often very natural progression. However, it often adds to the problem, or it exacerbates the problem. So given all these technologies and the marketing noise that's behind these technologies, it can be very difficult to evaluate the vendors who have developed these solutions. So how do you do vendor comparisons when you have a tremendous amount of noise and marketing hype? So it becomes difficult to evaluate in any meaningful way. So as an example, let's take analytics as an example, which we've probably all heard the discussions about this throughout the industry. Everyone is talking about it, and the expectations are fairly high in terms of garnering any types of benefits. But as analytics becomes a focus for an organization, people are asked to make decisions that are really outside of their normal comfort zone. And this is when an organization often makes a misstep because they look at technology as the solution. So for example, in this case, you might be asking the operations people and the business leaders to understand very complex concepts around information technology and very advanced mathematics, while they're still assuming they will understand the impact of deploying these technologies on the operations. That's a very big challenge. So with this challenge confronting people, it's difficult to find a good starting point. And naturally, what we find is they gravitate toward the functional components, which are outlined in this slide, of the analytics. That is, analytic techniques, the user experiences, tools, and deployment methods. It's not that these aren't good things to know, but you can't build a roadmap that aligns the business benefits in a meaningful way. So when organizations are able to get off what we call this hamster wheel of technology, when they keep going around and around, try to find the right technology, there's often a Eureka moment. They recognize that concentrating on the business needs will really provide a focus to the organization. A defined business need becomes really the stepping off point for really a digital transformation today. This leads the organization to pour energy into figure out how to scale from its starting point. And ARC is now seeing a significant amount of the market segment, the industrial users, moving into this state. And the idea is simple, relatively simple. That is, the organization identifies their business needs, which provides a definition of what is being transformed. This results in a filter, some sort of filter where you can take around use cases, where the organization can start to focus on data, processes, people, and technology that are all involved with this picture. And you can start to even extend this further into your customers as part of this analysis. Well, the output is really a deployment. It results in a deployment that can be a repeatable approach to scaling the problem. If you could do it once under this scenario, then it's just a matter of finding similar instances where you can repeat it. And this sounds logical, doesn't it? And it makes sense. So what typically happens? And this is where I'm going to show you what typically happens in organizations from the people that we often talk to. Everyone starts out extremely excited and focused on the problem. But then they start to encounter or foresee organizational impediments. Rather than deal with them, they simply avoid them or start to pull back on the problem. Thus, they're starting to construct limits on this innovation. And so inherently what happens is the value of this transformation, this digital transformation, becomes decreasingly smaller. And those that are driving change gravitate to things that are, let's say, obvious, but also manageable. So it is more resembling, in the end, as people retract from the problem, more of a incremental rather than a transformational change. And so we get back to the elephant in the room. That is, we're back to those cultural impediments, those barriers that constrain our ability to undergo a real digital transformation. In this case, if you focus on really the benefits, business benefits, and the needs far too early, some change might occur, but it's hardly transformational. And don't get me wrong, organizations will need to focus on those business benefits and provide a mapping. But it should come later in the digital transformation process and planning process. You need to think about focusing on those cultural impediments and barriers that are instrumental in preventing you from realizing the big gains that we outlined earlier. So, of course, this really begs the big question. How do I confront the cultural barriers in a way that enables me to break through these limitations, to break through these barriers? Well, digital transformation initiatives must find a way to connect, create what we call a connective tissue. Identify objectives, strategic objectives, and specifics of each project that is executed. And this really enables organizational adherence to a cohesive business strategy. And this can be done at all levels and throughout the entire organization, throughout the transformational process. Now, it ensures, first of all, prioritization of all the possibilities. And it also ensures that you have decisions that have rationalization behind it so that people that make them, that have the authority to carry them out, will have some rationale behind them. It also provides management to keep them fully informed. And this allows them to identify the operational realities so that they can have buy-in and identify where the long-term success is. And it also accounts for people involved and what role they'll play in the process. What role will they fill and how they derive purpose and value creation as this change continues to occur. So what we've done at ARC, we've developed what we call a three-step process. And to ensure that the alignment occurs, ARC recommends this three-step process for the planning of digital transformation. And everyone wants to skip the first one because we're talking about those cultural barriers and that elephant once again in the room. However, it begins with assessing the organization's appetite for change and what is it really capable of and what will it need to do so that the transformation can really take place. However, once you finish your step one process and completed that assessment, you can continue on to step two. Step two provides a meaningful way to develop a framework to consider the role of technology and how pilots will be used to select and deploy, how to select pilots in deployment areas throughout your organization so that they will meet your strategic framework. Now, step three is an alignment of your framework to the tactics. So designing a path for the organization's ability to pilot, deploy, and gain value based on a preferred set of technology. So within the last step, and perhaps the most important, it accounts really the people side of the digital transformation. And this is often the hardest barrier of success. Now, there's a lot more than I've outlined in this three-step process and underlying this three-step process. So if you'd like to learn more about this, we have a report titled Developing and Executing a Digital Transformation Strategy. And this is available to all of you upon request. So, in conclusion, I encourage all of you over the course of these 2 days to ask the hard questions, to share knowledge, challenge yourself and others, discover how to break through the limitations that prevent you from changing your organization. So I want you to enjoy this conference and take away from it the learning on what next steps you should be taking. So I look forward to talking to all of you and meeting as many of you as possible over the next few days. Thank you very much.